Okay, welcome to the day. I'm Steve here, and we're going to be working with some healing energies today. The field is set, and if you want to look back at other videos about setting up the field, you can do so, but otherwise, today it'll just be about working with the energetics of the event that we go back to. So we ask the higher self to take us to the portal of time, to the event that would be of the highest good, release and integrate today. And then we invite all souls back to the event who were affected by the event to release and integrate the energy of the event for themselves. We ask that we all be placed in a field of protection while we do this work. Okay, so today is February 14th, 15th, something like that, which I believe whichever one it is, I think this is Wednesday and is also Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day. I wish you that greeting because if you're one of those kids that the other kids didn't bring Valentine's Day cards for, and it traumatized your life, and you aren't over it yet. And obviously, I'm not because otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. But yeah, I mean, who knows what people do in this world because this world is a different world in many ways from the world when I was, you know, 7 through 14, and people were giving people Valentine's Day cards. And what did that signify? Especially when you're 7 years old. It was like, ooh, cooties, which is a term you may never have heard. But cooties were something bad that someone could give you by touching you. Kind of like the last 4 years has been another a reincarnation of the cootie period because people are really afraid of cooties. And so they're standing away from each other 6 feet apart, not and they're not physically making contact, and they're at one point I think we're like bleaching their shopping bags in case there were cooties on them. And so, but back in the day when I was young, which was a couple years ago, you could get a cootie shot. And if you got a cootie shot fast enough, then you wouldn't get cooties. So if somebody touched you and you went, ooh, you gave yourself a cootie shot. So it's interesting how these things just play out in the adult realm. I mean, semi-adult realm. Let's face it. This is not what we ever perceive to be adult behaviors. The behaviors that are taking place around the world, basically. This is just the playing out of some unresolved incidents from the past. So we hope it all gets resolved, and we're in the spiritual cleansing period of the 28-year cycle from 1997 when it was initiated to 2025, March 23rd, 2025, when it will be completed. And this is a cleansing cycle. And the first 7 years were physical, next 7 years were mental, next 7 years were emotional, next 7 years were spiritual. So we're in the last 14 months of the spiritual cleansing period. And I don't know about you, but it's seemed very significant to me in terms of how many things have just needed to be processed. So let's really get real today. Not that I don't do my best to be real every day, but you got to question what reality is fairly frequently, so you can maintain your own stability with inside yourself. So you can have your feet on the ground and your grounding chakras be open, and you can feel grounded. And sometimes it takes practice because sometimes the energetics of the world can disturb your sense of peace. And when that happens, then you can just go inside yourself briefly. It doesn't take a long time, and say, I ground myself to the healing center of the earth. Um, I release any energies that don't seem to be in my highest good. If I have stories coming up that are attached to emotions, I separate the emotions from the story. And by separating the emotions from the story, I release the emotions, thereby no longer needing the story, because the story was to explain emotions that we didn't feel like we could explain. So we had a story that we would tell about cootie shots or whatever, getting cooties, people having cooties, Valentine's Day cards, it's a day to sell chocolate, flowers, I think, for the most part. Or it's a day to honor someone that you care for deeply, and so I respect that. I respect people that care for people deeply. I think it's a good idea, and I highly recommend it as a practice. I'm just going to see if I can move that doorknob. So that's been catching my attention, hopefully not yours. Okay, so what has, some of you watching this might not even have been born in 1997. But for those of you who are born before 1997, what has the last 26, 27 years been like for you? Have they involved a lot of changes? I know the people that were born before that. Um, I mean, there were just so many wars. The wars, and I'm not even good at remembering all of them or even wanting to know the major history of wars and why they occurred, but there just appears to have been in this cycle of 13,000 years just a lot of wars, and even in the past just a couple hundred years, and there's just been so many things that have gone on that the healing fields help us to resolve, help us to finish. So that's really the idea of healing, is to finish things. I'm just going to straighten this. If I can figure out which knob that it takes to make this movement. Yeah. Okay. So again, I've suggested people watch some videos on cymatics, cymatics, so they can understand, so they can have a visual appreciation of how vibration changes matter. So, how we're affected by a change in vibration, how we're affected by someone's anger coming towards us, how we're affected by somebody's fear being around us, how we're affected by the world being triggered into a panicky fear energy. So they take actions that may not be all that useful for them and that they might not have taken if they were in a balanced, stable place and not triggered. So, triggering is accessing an emotional state that's from a past experience that's unresolved. So, that's all triggering is. So, somebody says to you, you know, I love you. And somebody said that to the person, maybe a long time ago, that then really did some horrible things. And so the word I love you means I'm going to hurt you really bad. And the brain can just make that connection. It doesn't have to. And I'm not suggesting that you do associate someone saying I love you with someone hurting you. Yet there are those where that has happened. So for those of you where that has happened, where somebody said I loved you and then they hurt you, and then you associated loving with hurting, you can just separate those out. Feel the story that if somebody tells you they love you, they're going to hurt you. That's the story. Take the emotions from that story. And once you separate the emotions from the story, you can just release those emotions. And yes, will you get better and better and better at this as you do it more and more? I would say yes. And there are just many old energies, old emotional energies that would be best to be resolved, no matter how great the story is, no matter how much the trauma was, no matter whether it occurred for you in childhood, whether it's something you haven't been able to face your whole lifetime and has affected you your entire lifetime, you can still let it go. And I recommend that you let it go for this reason, because you'll be more present. You'll be less able to be controlled by the world around you, by the world stimulating you into going into fearful states and not being balanced, grounded, and present, which is all that's it's the only state that's really useful to be is balanced, grounded, and present, stable, whatever the words you want to use, but in balance and making your choices from that place. And even if the world seems very imbalanced to you, seems like just things are going on that make no sense to you, that's fine. They don't let them not make sense to you. Because it's very similar saying, um, I, I love you, and then having it anchored to the person that said that doing damage to you. It's kind of like if we say, we'll make a treaty with you, and then, oh, well, we broke the treaty. Well, we can do that because there's nothing you can do about it. So, all that kind of stuff, that the stuff that, like, oh, we're here to govern fairly. And then all these things go on that we go, well, that doesn't seem fair to anyone. And, these are confusing things. Let's not get imbalanced because of it. Let's maintain our balance because it's better for us. And the more we're grounded, the more we're in balance, the more we're present, the more enjoyable our life can be. And when we're triggered, if we have some skills to work with that triggering. So triggering is an unresolved event that has emotions that have not been released, that something external thing sets it off, and those memories come back, and we go into those memories, and then we try to explain them, and that's the story. So when you try to explain these feelings that you don't know why you're having, they're just triggered, and you're going like, well, I'm feeling this way because you didn't close the door quietly enough. Whatever. I mean, it's all a story. When we take the story, and we take the story that has emotions, we take the emotions from the story, we release the emotions. Story has no emotions. Story has very little value. People can tell the same story. You meet someone, and I'm guilty of this as well. For 70 some years, once I could talk, I was telling stories and telling the same story. So you meet someone, and they tell you their story, and they tell you how they just haven't gotten over the loss of their dog, and you say, well, when did you lose your dog? And they say, well, I think it's 50 years now. And you go, and you've been in that pain and loss for 50 years? And the person goes, well, yeah, I really love that dog. And you hear the story, and if you don't have a dog, if you're not even old enough to have had a dog pass away 50 years ago, then you might not be able to comprehend it, but you might be able to go, oh yeah, I love my dog that much. And when I lose my dog, I may never get over it. These are all stories that we can make up. People do make up, and people rationalize them and tell you the reason. The story is the reason that they're having this feeling from this small incident that blew out of proportion. And once you understand triggering, once you, just you're listening to this, once you understand triggering, and you understand that you don't have to get lost in the emotions or the story, that you can separate them out, you can release the emotions and take the value out of the story. And instead of telling the same story about who you are over and over again, you can be different and have a different story come up. So that feels like enough. So I'm just going to say these words. So I ask the higher self and our soul group, the interdimensional being, to assist all the souls that had returned to the event to combine with that part of their soul that had remained at the event and bring that combined soul back into their body in present time with all of its wisdom, power, and clarity. And you feel that part of your soul come back into the body. It's it's livelier. You know, an event's been cleared. That part of you that came back with a part of it you went there, all of that energy is clear of that event. You've just gone back to the story, released the emotions from it. That's all. Healing event. Now I ask all those souls to ground themselves in the healing center of the earth. And open up the portal. I just am yawning. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. And that's Canadian. How I think in the United States people say sorry. But in Canada, I think they say sorry. And I spent 6 months in Canada, my first 6 months. So somehow it went in there and sorry. I apologize for saying sorry like I say sorry. So we ground ourselves in the healing side of the earth. We open up the portal for the delivery of the new energies into the earth at this time. The new energies come into the earth. I'm sorry, I'm yawning. Sorry. When are you going to stop saying sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't stopped saying sorry. Oh, there's the sorry story. There's the emotions. Take those emotions out of the story. Release the emotions. Release the story. You don't have to say sorry. Don't have to have a sorry story anymore. I ask that those energies be activated, and I let the universe and beyond know that the event has been cleared, the energies have been brought in. It's all good. So have a lovely Valentine's Day. Let go of any pain related to previous Valentine's days or people or Valentines or loves or losses or anything. Yeah, it's time to lose your loss. Lose your loss. Get back to enjoying the moment without loss. And will there be future loss? We don't know. Things are changing, and just the more present we are, the more balanced we are, the more grounded we are, the more we're taking care of ourselves, the more available we'll be for ourselves, available to ourselves and others in assisting them from a balanced, grounded, stable place with compassion and curiosity. So going into your deep self, the deep self that lives in peace and calm, I bid you a good day Now must go. I can find the button and the arrow and put the button and the arrow together. Now must go.